waiting for Patricia's. Okay. Good evening in Indonesia. Good day in Brazil for Patricia and me here in France. So very honored to be here with you guys from Indonesia. I'm always learning with you. Today we have a presentation that will talk about national thought. It's this our second class, and the proposition is to have a working group after the class. So we discuss more concrete things related to Dockers and strategic workers in Indonesia. So Patricia, I will ask you to put a presentation, please. So we may start. It won't be very long, the presentation. Okay. Hi, Jackie. Great to see you.
There she
Great to
is.
see you. Hey,
Hello,
hey, Jackie. Good
Surya.
to see you. Good to see you. I hope you like
Good
the
to see you.
presentation today. Okay. For those who don't know, Jackie and I, we studied together some time ago. No, Jackie. So some time ago. Good to see you, Jackie. Good to see you. So today we will talk about Tamalaka, an Indonesian soft thought for port and the other strategic workers. So the idea is to have, as we had in the other classes, Brazil, El Salvador, Peru, Cameroon, and Italy, a person that would personify the national social thought. So every country had one person. It doesn't mean that Tamalaka will get all the national thought. It means that will be introduced to Indonesian social thought and national thought through Tamalaka. So I would advise people to read Tamalaka and to read other founding fathers of Indonesia, because all of them will add values to this discussion. We cannot think about a Dockers and a strategic workers thought without a national thought. It's very important because it has to come from the country. Without the country, we cannot have a Dockers thought, even though it's a global category. It's a global, uh, uh, in the way that it's a global thought coming from strategic workers and from Dockers. But when we are rooted in a national thought, in a social thought, we are in good base, and that's what we're gonna try to do today. So next, please, próximo. So Tamalaka, as the father of national social thought in Indonesia. So the propositions to get some of the Tamalaka's ideas. I myself, I'm being introduced. I knew Tamalaka, but I didn't know as much, and I'm still learning, like everybody else. But the more I read about him, the more I knew he was close to the biggest pedagogical thinker in Brazil. His name is Paulo Freire. So I use a lot Paulo Freire, and there are a lot of people in Brazil that study Tamalaka to compare him with Paulo Freire, because he was a teacher. And we can know about more about Tamalaka yourselves. Here we'll just concentrate in his contribution to the founding of modern Indonesia and to the national and social thought as a strategic thought for Dockers and strategic workers. So his contribution for that. So I will read it. Tamalaka emphasized the importance of education. This was very important for him as a tool for social struggle. He combined analytical and synthetic approaches to create individuals who were critical of social reality. In his view, education should liberate, empower people, and prepare them to face social and political challenges. So in this way, trade union is inside social and political challenges. It would be alongside. He also strongly criticized the colonial education system at the time until 45, the beginning of liberation. So he criticized this a lot, which only produced intellectual slaves in the sense that people would go to Holland and to other European countries. They would study, but they would be attached in their national and social thought to the thought of the master of the country at that time. So he would criticize this a lot. Who were unable to think critically. So to look at the reality of Indonesia and think critically about it. His thoughts remain relevant in the context of modern education. This is globally. You know, the more I study, I think his contributions are global contributions, not just Indonesian, but we will focus more on the Indonesian situation. But it's a global contribution. He taught the importance of building critical awareness through dialogic and inclusive education. That's what gets him very close to Paulo Freire, this dialogic and inclusive education. So it's an education that comes out of the workers, not out of specialists. So both Tamalaka, both Paulo Freire, and another author that I use a lot, his name is Anton Makarenko, they say the education comes from the workers, comes from the communities, comes from the base. It's not a top-down approach for education. It's a bottom-up and a horizontal approach of education. So in an increasingly complex world we live in, dockers and the strategic workers, for sure, airline workers, rail, oil workers, industrial workers, need an education that integrates local values with global vision in a national environment. This stripe is very important. Okay, local values. This has lots to do with Indonesia. Global vision. We'll talk about that. There's one class for that. So it's internationalism is one of the class. So we will focus that later in a national environment. And we start today in a national perspective. I cannot talk about El Salvador with a national perspective. Brazil, national perspective. Cameroon, national perspective. Italy, national perspective. Peru, national perspective. And Indonesia, national perspective. If we don't understand Indonesia, we cannot work in Indonesia. This is the base. So this national environment is very important. So every time that people want to lecture and teach, we say, we dockers, we strategic workers, we begin with a national social thought. We are rooted in it. So this is one important thing about Tamalaka, because he shares with me, with Paulo Freire, with Makarenko, this vision. Okay? Before becoming global, we have to be local and we have to be national. We can be at the same time, but it's very important to say that we are national. So as Indonesians, we will see the problem, the concrete problem. We cannot avoid bypass. We can never do that. We have to look as Indonesians to a concrete problem for a concrete solution from the start point of a national thought and a national social thought. And that's Tamalaka's contribution in this sense. So just like Paulo Freire, Tamalaka promoted education as a tool for liberation, emphasizing dialogue between workers to build critical conscience. So this what links Paulo Freire and Tamalaka in a very combined way. They didn't meet each other because Tamalaka is a lot older than Paulo Freire, but they shared and combined the same values from their own national culture and values and perspective. So they combine a global vision from a national perspective and environment from a local value that they share. It's interesting because they didn't meet and they didn't speak the same language. They came from different cultures. And that's the same thing with dockers and strategic workers. We will analyze that in other classes. The Bridge of Malacca and Freire is a process of workers' emancipation that enables individuals to understand their social conditions and contribute to social change. Okay? And finally, we are able to say that we are not empty vessels. Both Malacca and Paulo Freire use these words. We are not empty vessels to be filled with information, with formation, technical formation that dockers and airline workers, oil workers, strategic workers, they have a lot of formal education and practical education. But we are not empty vessels. We will give our perspective, our individual, and more important, our collective vision, our collective participation to it. We are protagonists. This is a word that they used a lot. We are protagonists in our own educational process. This, if you can get this sentence, the class is okay. The whole class. We are protagonists in our own educational process. So in the future, you guys will teach in Indonesia with workers I will not meet in the grassroots. I will not meet. So these people are also protagonists. That's the difference between adult education and young and child education. Even though child and young, they can contribute, but the adults supposed to contribute more. And if they are adult workers, they supposed to contribute a lot more. So the idea is to be a protagonist in our own educational process, always. Próximo, next, please. So Bapak Republic, I don't know if I will say the right way, okay? Bapak Republic,
Perfect,
Indonesia.
perfect.
Thank you. Bapak Republic, Indonesia, and Tam Malacca's central ideas to serve the working class. So this is the contribution of Tam Malacca's thought to the thinking of Indonesia port workers and strategic workers and the working class as a whole. Is first to think of the country as a politically and economically independent. The whole process of the formation of Tam Malacca was the process of independence of Indonesia. This is very important because there was a gap between independence, the declaration of independence, and the recognition of independence, not just for Holland, the Netherlands, but the other West countries as well. So this is a process that has to be politically and economical, not just politically speaking. Without economy dependence, because even though Tam Malacca didn't use this word, because this is a thing that just appeared in the 60s and he died in the 40s. But dependence is when you become independent politically, but is still dependent economically. And the elites, they study abroad and they come back, as Tam Malacca said, as academic slaves. They don't have a national thought. They don't have a national contribution to Indonesia because they think like the former masters. So it's not just economic dependency, but also cultural and other things that can come, and thoughts. And at the same time, to build a country based on the Indonesian thought, a thought deeply rooted, deeply connected with community and society. These thoughts are deeply connected, we shall see, with Indonesian way of seeing things. And that's the way we have to start with our formal and our informal education with the workers. It's from the Indonesian perspective. It has to be deeply rooted and deeply connected with community and society. And in the case of the dockers, with dockers culture, if it's airlines, airline culture. So if every own culture will contribute to this. I just like to emphasize dockers culture because it's rooted with immemorial times. So it's richer in this sense. But it's all connected in a way that it has to look for the source. And the source in the case of all workers of Indonesia is community and society. It's a long history, so it has to be connected with this also. The birth of thought is like the birth of a child. This is Tamalaka's word. I will now use his words. The birth of thought is like the birth of a child because it is preceded by pain and suffering, but followed by enormous joy. It's not easy to think by yourself, especially collective, because that's where we analyze. One thing is to think yourself, Surya, Jack, and Furman, and Agman, and the ones that are here. The other thing is to think collective. We are analyzing collective thinking. And this collective thinking needs to have bridges of dialogue, but also critical dialogue. So it's painful to do that because we want to be by ourselves. We want to hold with our ideas. We have to share them. We have to learn how to share and to combine. This is this is preceded by pain this way, but is followed by enormous joy when we find common thought. This is the way that he puts. Who is strong in this is analyzing the way that Indonesia developed, and it's a very interesting way because Tamalaka didn't preview this, but the history took Indonesia into a way that put the industrial and logistical sector as its core. And this was in the 40s, Malaka was saying that. Who is strong in the industrial and logistical sector will be the one who will win. There is no meaningful Dockers program or strategic program if there is no movement of Dockers or strategic workers. So workers have to have a program. In this sense, industrialization and strategic logistics. But we need to have a problem. We cannot delegate this to the state. We cannot delegate this to the bosses, to the bourgeoisie, to the capitalists, whatever, to the port operators, airport operators, refinery operators. We cannot delegate that. We have to have our own thoughts, our collective thoughts. So we cannot delegate that. We have to have our plan to industrialize Indonesia, to aggregate value, so they will pass to the ports and to the airports and to the other means of transportation with added value. And so we can ask for better pay raise, salaries, rights, and other things. The more we contribute to industrialization and with setting things up in Indonesia, the more we will share its wealth. So this is very important. The way Malakas thought that was a very holistic approach, a very global approach of Indonesia. And that's very important. We may not think that's I talk about with the Cameroonese a lot, but in Cameroon, they are a little bit like in Indonesia. They have many languages, they have many ethnicities, they have many cultures, but Indonesia is just one. We cannot contribute to the fraction of Indonesia. Never ever. Indonesia is our wealth, is our jewelry. It's a bench of like a cook pot where we put many things inside, and we will not separate by religion. We will not separate by ethnicity. We will not separate by language. We have to be combined in this way. And Malaka, his contribution is also in this sense, to look at Indonesia as one body, and in this sense. So, and then he finishes this part saying that because he used this word a lot, and revolution is a very special word. If I would if I would synthesize the word revolution, it means deep-rooted change of society. So we can say that the coming of Indonesia into independence was a revolution, a popular revolution in a way, because it was not accepted before by the Netherlands. So revolution is a deep-rooted and in some ways radical way, because it doesn't conserve society. So it doesn't have to be armed with guns, but it has to be people, everyone. You will ask the lady that works inside the port and serves coffee, or the gentleman at the door that opens the door, everybody at the airport, anywhere, people will say, oh, this is a radical change. We were like this before, and now we are different. So this is how I say revolutions. It doesn't mix with other combinations. People that use the word revolution without meaning, they are usually deceived by the use, because this word is very strong in the way that it's change, that everybody can share this vision of change. Arise by itself as a result of various circumstances and becomes something that is caused by an association of life, one, like every one of you. As I said, everybody recognize it, but it's also equal certain nation of actions in society. So it's combined actions in society that change in deeply rooted way, but also that everybody converts to it. And in the case of Indonesia, only Indonesians can do it. Only Indonesians can do it. Próximo, next. So that's why we say he's a Bapak Republic, because he's one guy that thought about, it's one of the founding fathers of the Republic of Indonesia. The values of Indonesian people naturally oppose systematic individualism and neoliberalism. If you analyze, and you are a lot more capable than I to do that, if you analyze Indonesian history, Indonesian society, Indonesian culture, you see that these values that we'll talk about a little bit today, they are opposed to what's happening today. People don't want to unionize. People don't want to go to the assembly. People don't want to struggle. People don't want to do that. But these values are not Indonesian values. They were coming from this system that we live in, that is a global system, and was inoculated. It was a vaccine. But it's a vaccine in the other way. It's like a poison that damages, and we need the vaccine. And the vaccines to look for inside our own values, in our own Indonesian values that were naturally present in our society. So how fast, and then Balaka say again, how fast is the lie? In this way, this what I'm explaining is a lie, because it's not ours. It comes from abroad. It comes from something that we don't share. This is a lie in this sense. How fast is a lie? But the truth will continue to chase it. So in a way that our values will continue to chase, to change it, to be more ours, to be more present to us, more useful to us. When you plan your actions, think big first, then you may act. We will talk about this in the third class a lot. The method that we use, because the teams that we share in this class, in these 12 classes, they are by teams. Today we're talking about national thought, social thought, but it will be succeeded by the method we use. And this is, in order to act, we have to think first. We have to plan first, and we have to think big. And that's related to our class today. Our national and social thought cannot be small. We have to think about our communities, our working place for sure, but our communities, our society, and the chain of production, the logistic chain. In the system we live, it cannot be studied and criticized. So then the exact science to build a better system will die. If we don't have a criticized way of seeing things, if we don't study, if we don't use science as a tool, we cannot build an environment that will help us to change things. And the whole system we want to build, we want to live in, will die. We need science. So Malaka said that it's very important to have science as a handy tool that we use a lot. He was a very scientific person in this way. He had his beliefs, had his ideology, but he was very, very critical to analyze things to see if it would be good for Indonesia, if it would be good for this community, if it would be good for this kind of work. So workers would use this and see, am I using science to solve this problem? Am I using science in a way that I will criticize so I can have a synthesis, so I can understand it better? Or otherwise, I cannot solve this problem, and the whole system I want to build will die. And in this way, he would say books and education are above everything. He even said that if we want to separate things, as he knew that Indonesian society is very deeply connected, especially in rural areas, he would say, let's put more money in education than even food and shelter. That's very important. But education for us, deeply rooted education in our values, but also in modern values, are very important for us. So books and education are above everything in this sense. And our society must be founded on those who work and in and for Indonesia. So those who work inside Indonesia and for Indonesia. So we can build a historical block. If I would say, if we think about, if you sit, if tomorrow Furman and Surya may sit with the Minister of Development or Minister of Work, and he will talk about industrialization. And then we would start from the point and say, we dockers, we airline workers, we oil workers, we using workers, factory workers, we are thinking about, we worry for those who work in Indonesia and for Indonesia. That's a contribution we can share with Malacca in the way that our society must be founded on those who work in Indonesia and for Indonesia. This is very important. And in the way to develop this, when we're dealing with a problem, the best defense is the deep defense that we can build. It's not just to resist, okay? It's to build a prepared and organized defense that prepares the attack. And we, in the working groups, we will list what is attacking us, what is a common value with other strategic workers, what is a combined action by the state, whether by the bosses, that we have to build at the best defense. And this best defense has to be deeply rooted in what we prepare, so we can think about a counterattack and an attack. So a strike or a protest, it has to be deeply prepared and thought in advance, because we have to build a deep defense, a previous defense, an organized defense. Before the Indonesians master, and that's very important, Balaka said, and I agree totally. Before the Indonesians master Western knowledge, they have not graduated from Western schools. So if you want to graduate from the West, you have to master, you have to study. And that's why you use science, because science is a combined thing. Science will be science in Indonesia, in France, in Brazil, anywhere. So that's important. We have to know others by what we study. Collective education aims to sharpen collective intelligence, strengthen collective willpower, and to refine shared objectives, values, and feelings. Surya, I want you to translate this, please, in Indonesian. This sentence, if you may, please. Collective education aims to sharpen collective intelligence, strengthen collective willpower, and to refine shared objectives, values, and feelings. If you may, Surya, please translate.
I think I lost some words.
Oh, no,
Could you
it's written
please slowly?
here.
Or
Number five. Look,
I
collective
cannot.
education. Can you see?
Wait a wait a sec. Um, I'm using my phone, so it's
Oh,
very
sorry.
small.
Can you do it,
Wait.
Jackie, please? Maybe Jackie can do it. Can you read? Are you in the mobile or the computer? Can you see number five here? Jackie, can you follow me in the number five?
Okay. Okay, I see it.
Okay, great, great.
Teman-teman, ini Prof. Marcelo minta saya translate ke teman-teman terkait dengan poin nomor 5. Kolektif edukasi bertujuan untuk menajamkan kolektif intelijensia, memperkuat kolektif kekuatan kolektif dan keinginan kolektif, dan memurnikan tujuan bersama, nilai bersama, dan perasaan bersama.
So this is the core thought of Tamalaka. That's why I asked Surya to translate, because this is very core to Tamalaka. And this is shared with Paulo Freire, with Makarenko, and many other pedagogic in the world. But this combines Tamalaka's adaptation here, so it combines his view and thoughts. Okay, that's why I ask, because it's important to bring to our core, our language. Language is also core thing. Unfortunately, I don't speak Indonesian. You don't speak Portuguese, but we're using English as a tool. But it's important to have it deeply rooted in our minds, and the core message that Tamalaka brings today. And this is deeply rooted in the Indonesian values that are shared with the founding fathers of Indonesia. The good for the port and for the strategic workers and the community deepens and depends on the character of the workers in the workplace and the community. So as we have combined values, we will adapt also in the character of the workers and the way that these workers have values also. So if I say dockers, it's one thing. If I say airline workers, it will be other things. If I combine all strategic workers, will be one thing. If I say precarious workers, will be another thing. So the good for the port and the community depends on the character of the workers in the workplace and community, and the upbringing of each docker and worker. So the process that I just said, collective education, is the upbringing. It's participation. So using community values, society values, workers' values, we will upbring these workers. So this is also Malaka's idea of working on the ground, and will be useful for us in the next classes. Okay? Próximo, Patrícia, por favor. Next. Collectivism is an Indonesian thought in a high collective society. So he say again, learn from the West, but do not be an imitator of the West, but be an intelligent student from the East. Learn and with and for the East. Be deeply rooted in the East. So Malaka's words are an invitation for us. We have to look for the center, or the previous center, because the world is changing. So let's say things are changing too. But if I would say civilization, okay? And we have many civilizations in the world. If we would say from outside, looking, studying from a civilization, Malaka is telling us to be an intelligent student from the outside of this civilization. But also, as he said before, in order to master it, you have to know it. So it's a combined action. Very rich thinker. Tamalak is a very rich thinker. So port and the strategic workers, and now I change. Port and the strategic workers are deeply rooted in collective work, especially port workers. Okay? Organization, advocacy, struggle and share the same destiny in their communities, cities, society, and supply chains. This is something that we will study in the other classes, but what I want to say that both port workers and the strategic workers in different level, if I get a bus driver, will be different from an airline worker, will be different for a oil worker, will be different grades and shades of light, but they all are very collective in their work because they don't work individually. And this is also related with collectivism. This is an Indonesian thought. So we can understand our communities, our cities, our society, and the supplies chain from this perspective. Labor, because I will always tell you from a labor center perspective here. This is my school because I share the same school with Malacas in this sense. So I will always come from labor perspective. But we can also go from the community perspective, that is also labor in an indirect way, and the society. And when we analyze a Docker city, it will have a different. If I go to Hamburg or to Genoa or to Marseille, these cities are different because they are Docker cities. And I bet the most important city in Indonesia is Jakarta. So the port that serves Jakarta, it's a very important port, and it contaminates in a good way this big city, and we have to understand that. And the same happens with a big airport, with a hub. They use a lot this word hub. So we have to understand these strategic choke points. We will analyze that later, but this is important because it's linked to our collectivism and our Indonesian thought and our labor thought. So these things are linked. Community value thought, so social thought, strategic thought, national thought, what we are studying today. And every country has one thinker like Malacca that will analyze with other thinkers this national thought. So if I would go to El Salvador, they would have another national thought, but they would be brothers in analyzing this. And that's what we have to think when we go to our working groups, okay? In the case of Indonesia, family and friends with deep-rooted culture in collectivism and community concern, life in Indonesia means it needs to be shared. And we cannot forget that as workers. This is very important. When we try to unionize somebody, we don't go straight with a sheet of unionize and say, hey, unionize here. No, you talk about the environment. You talk about the values. You talk about the support that the union must have. Then it comes in another level that he will contribute, because being unionized means contributing to it. So it's another level of conscience. So this is rooted with this, that life needs to be shared. Our working values, our work environment, our labor environment, it needs to be shared because we pass a lot of the time we live, it's in the place we work. And it's a collective place. So we need to share it. We don't have, and unionizing, it's part of it. Okay? The other thing is life is meant to be lived with kindness, responsibility towards others, and gratitude. This is very important in Indonesian values, and it's you guys that travel, you know that's not everywhere. Okay, this is something that Indonesia has, and it's very good. I've never been to Indonesia. I want to know, but my friends I went, and when I met Jackie, she spoke with me a little bit. We were in another country, so I wanted to know more about Indonesia. It was the first time. There were two friends there, Inda and Jackie, and we spoke about Indonesia. And she said about that, about gratitude. I remember that. So kindness, responsibility, gratitude. And this is the base that we will work in other things. As workers, we have to be based on something. As Indonesian workers, we will be based in this. And there's another thought that's very interesting. If my neighbor becomes a thief because he's hungry, I also become a thief. When I read that, it's really because it deepens the thought we just saw above. This is a very communitarian concern. Collectivism, that's why I said it's a high collective society in this way. But these values are more connected to rural areas, of course. So it means we will analyze that with two words are very keen to Indonesian, but I believe this is a common value also in the way, but it's very beautiful in the way that is put here. Is very beautiful, very beautiful. I have to say, combine success and help versus self-sufficiency and how many are there when you need. So people analyze in Indonesia when you're rich is when you have a problem and people that will be there for you when you need. Then you're rich. And this is something very special. This is something very special. And this is very linked to the union that we organize. This is something that when we need people. So the more we are rich in the union, it's not the money we have in the bank account. We can say to our treasurer, you are important, but you're not the most important. It's the organizing guy that is important because he will talk with this how many when we need the most. We need people with us. That's why we share values. So this is important also. Of course, we need combined success. We need this propaganda, the small victories that make the big victories important. Where we need to know when we are in deep problem, how many will be there for us. So this is also an Indonesian thought that is important to have in mind. Próximo, next. And now we come to this value. This is very important. Gotong Hoyong. I don't know if I will say the right way, but
Well said, comrade. Well said.
Gotong Hoyong or mutual cooperation is not just a cultural value. Even though we will have a class about culture, and when I say culture, it's labor culture, it's not national culture because it's another class. But in this cultural value, it doesn't say all about Gotong Royong. Gotong Royong is bigger than a cultural value, a lot bigger. But it's also a social citizenship and a way of life. So a way of life would get everything, but a social citizenship is very important. We have to think about Indonesia as a place that we will share citizenship with other people. With all the 250 million, we have to think about that. How many are sharing social citizenship with me? And as dockers, as strategic workers, airline, oil workers, factory workers, we have to think how many are sharing these values with me. This is very important. Okay? So Gotong Royong, as a pillar of Indonesian society, is also a lesson to the world. Every place I will now go, I will talk about Gotong Royong because it's a contribution from the Indonesian culture to mankind, to humankind. So it's very important. It's a gift, okay, to the world. But it's intrinsically tied to Indonesian culture, thought and history. So that's why we have to know our history. When Buddhists came, and then when before Hinduism came, and then when Muslims came, and when the Christians came, and then mixed all this religion and culture in Indonesia, and what was there in Indonesia. So we have to know the whole history of Indonesia, but also how these ties that created Gotong Royong, they were built because are these values are the values that will be the base for society. So as a comprehensive, this way is a very comprehensive philosophy rooted in mutual cooperation. And this is a work that we do as strategic workers, as dockers. And its core values are altruism, we already spoke a little bit about, community spirit, and collective responsibility. If you are inside the port and if you don't have collective responsibility, my comrade, my fellow comrade on the side may die because of it. If I'm inside an airport and I pass on the side of a turbine, I may die. If I don't say, look, there's an area that you cannot walk inside this perimeter. So we have collective responsibility, whether inside a factory, inside a port, inside a refinery, inside an airport. This is very important, and this is also Gotong Royong. So this is something that we can build for other objectives that we shall work in the working groups. On the other side, collective individualism. And now we go to the other way again, because this is about on the opposite side of social citizenship and community responsibility is these values, is the collective individualism. There's no such a thing as society, only families and individual people, an individual person, an individual being. No, Thatcher, this is not true. I mean, and Gotong Hoyong is a proof that this is not true. So we have to understand these values. This collective individualism is against Gotong Hoyong and also against Dockers and the strategic thought, as Dockers and the strategic workers thought is collective in its core for workers to master and to manage their organized work, community, city, country, and globally. It's a message, it's a global message through the chain of production and proletariat internationalism in this sense. So Gotong Hoyong is a message at the bottom end, a local message is a proletarian internationalism message as well. The struggle against economical, political, social collective individualism and neoliberalism in this way is a struggle for the future of dockers and strategic workers who can use the Gotong Hoyong tool and become a lighthouse to give hope to those who fight selfness and egoism in this world. So when I analyze deep-rooted collective values, social thought, national thought, I will be tied to Gotong Royong. There's no other way I can do that in Indonesia. Próximo. Next. So now we will analyze a little bit of the Indonesian history because I cannot cover everything. It's just to give a sip because one thing is linked to the other. We cannot understand science to analyze them, our thought, without understanding our history. So in the way of Indonesian history is a path to independence with the challenge of dependence. Okay? Dependence is when me and Jackie, we go to France, we go to Italy, we go whatever, but we will not be a dependent thinker because we will be always rooted on where we come from with our thought. So dependence is also this, but its dependence is also when I look at some countries, not Indonesia, in the ASEAN, and I see they didn't industrialize. This is dependency. This is economical dependency. I could list some of the countries here, I will not, but Indonesia went the other way. Indonesia put an effort inside Asian in industrialization and logistics strategic view. But it starts with independence, okay, and its recognition in 1945 and 1949. So national social thought is a process. Determines that we must understand the timeline of our history in each stage of our history. So when I say 1945, 1949, I'm not saying much because I know that it started before. Tamalaka died in the same way that Netherlands recognized its independence, and it's not for free, okay? Things are linked. But this process started long before the 40s. So we have to understand the timeline. We don't have to go to the 6th century, but we have to go when modernization started, okay? Especially modern history, within our process of domination in the capitalist system. That's very important. Understanding independence, we are talking about here, 1945, dependence, because between 1945 until 2025, there was a process of dependence. Sovereignty, that's the opposite of dependence. Multilateralism, this is very keen. India, Brazil, Indonesia, they were always talking about multilateralism, always. Industrialization, very important, strategic logistics, partnerships and opportunities for development, prosperity, and living well. What we want is to share values with social citizenship, with our all dockers, all airline workers, all oil workers, factory workers, strategic workers, and the whole working class in Indonesia. If we cannot do that, we are not sharing. We need to share this opportunity that comes with logistics, that comes with industrialization. Okay? That's why you industrialize the country, not to have a huge gap between the rich and the poor. So we have to see that. Or the rural areas or the industrial areas also, if we can say, or different islands, or different ethnicity, or different religions. As I said before, it's just one Indonesia. And we have to always say that. We will not divide the people. We unite the people. That's very important. And prosperity and living well. It doesn't mean to have autonomy and respect local cultures. Things can go along. With decent wages and rights, now I start putting the things that we work in the working groups, okay? Decent rates and rights, exclusive organization of work. This is something very important for dockers, where we can exercise that in different strategic workers. Organized work is different than someone that we call in the street and say, hey, come to work for me today. This is not organized work. Organized work means the trade union has a lot of influence in organizing work on daily basis. Okay. Then we have the due distribution of wealth in the port, in the working places, strategic places, in the communities, whether when I say strategic places, when you see a refinery, an airport, and a factory is the same size of wealth that was generated in the port. So it's a strategic point. It's not just a choke point, it's a strategic point. So also the community, because every airport, every port is linked to a community, cities, society, and the historical objectives of port and strategic workers for the working class thinking. So I started 1945, 1949, we covered that. Then we go to something that is not just Indonesia, it's the whole world. Everybody that knows a little bit of history talk about the Bandung Conference. It's very important. And it's also when all these countries start to develop for sure. Because it's not just independence, it's how we link to each other. So the UN is 1948, Bandung is 55. So we have a whole country. Until 1948, we just had 50 independence countries in the world. Now we are almost 200 to it. I don't know if Indonesia recognized Palestine as a state. Brazil did. Many countries are doing. Many European countries are not doing, like Portugal and France, not yet. But Jackie will say later if Italy recognized Palestine as an independent country. But it's important for Indonesia to recognize Palestine as an independent country. And we have to say a word on that. We, as dockers at the airline workers, strategic work, we have to say, we defend that. So the Bandung Conference was the first time that people organized globally. When I say global, it's a lot. There was already the Baku Conference before, but here, national social thought and non-aligned movement, this birth of it. So it's very important for that. Then we go to economics, because we cannot think about social citizenship within understanding Asian. And the aims to achieve a single market, but not just, I wouldn't say market, is to think about Asia, not in a British or French or North American or other countries' perspective, but as Asians to Asians, not just market, but politically. So to achieve production base, I would put politics as well, competitive economic region, but also linking social citizenships, region of equitable economic development, region fully integrated into the global economy. So this process goes, I put 2007 here, but I could put 2013 when the Belt and Road Initiative was done. So all this links with Asia. Okay, so 1967, it's a little bit after Bandung, but then we have, I would start 2007, 2000, because it's a little bit before 2008 crisis, and when people started to say Asian plus. And then we come to 2025, where Asian plus and BRICS plus, and now Indonesia is part of the BRICS, a bridge between global powers promoting stability and opportunity for common prosperity of the countries of the region and their associates. So that's how Asian Plus links with other associates from a sovereignty perspective, not a dependence, sovereignty perspective. And we have to analyze as docker workers, as airline workers, oil workers, factory workers, if this is coming to our members, our fellow workers, our comrades, if this prosperity that the global supply chain, and Indonesia is very important for logistics, and we will see, is coming to the workers we represent and the working class as a whole. Próximo, por favor. And then we come to another important say. So not Gotong Hoyong plus, now you tell me, Kerja Bhakti plus Docker's culture. So when I say Docker's culture here, it's not just Dockers, but strategic workers, but we have to analyze the tree, okay? So we analyze 1, 2, and the labor. I put lockers here, you could put labor's culture because there will be different shades of it. We have to go in this tripe in the case of Indonesia. So Kerja Bhakti, meaning that all members contribute to their community. And this is action. It's not just Gotong Royong is a philosophy. It's action. So it complements, as well as unity in struggle and action. A tradition where one helps the other and the community values adding to working values. So in this sense, it needs to be translated into actions. Okay, so labor action will be labor-based, but also community-based, community value-based values, philosophical values, the morals of our actions. So that's why Kerja Bhakti is very important in this way. When we analyze the social thought of a country, we have an obligation to analyze the social thought of the workers of this country. That's why because it will be added. That's why I said a tripe, because it adds. Okay, when we analyze the social thought of the port workers in Indonesia and strategic workers, oil workers, factory, airline, we will analyze this labor social thought. And we understand that the contribution of the double solidarity, that's Gotong Royong and Kerja Bhakti, it's a double solidarity that will be embedded in this labor culture that we advocate, and will be also the base of it. So it's a dialogical approach, and that's why Tamalaka is very important this way, because it's a dialogical approach to this vision. So Gotong Royong and Kerja Bhakti is not, it's not floating, it's not flying away. It's deeply rooted in us when we analyze things. So it's a double solidarity. Gotong Royong, added by Kerja Bhakti, is the base on which the natural work In this case, I'm analyzing here is because dockers work collectively, and we analyze factory workers, oil workers, and airline workers. They also work collectively. So it will be a tri-p vectors, three vectors in the same triangle. They are all by nature collective, will be established on a solid foundation of solidarity. So Gotong Royong and Kiribati are a solid foundation for the labor culture. That's very important. For the labor's thought at the beginning, because we cannot have a culture without a thought, collective thought. Okay? Therefore, the port thought and the strategic thought, developed as an Indonesian thought, comes out triply strengthened and in turn reverts to further strengthen the thought management. This is organizing management, not just the boss and the state manages things. We manage too. Okay? Culture, memory, history, and power of the port and strategic workers in Indonesia, and can be combined with other strategic workers and with the working class as a whole to face historical, immediate, and urgent circumstantial and strategic problems of the Indonesian workers. When we work at the working groups, we will learn to separate historical from immediate and urgent circumstantial strategic problems. We have to master the difference between the problems, the concrete problems we have, where we cannot do that without a collective thought. And this collective thought, labor collective thought, will be based in solid foundations, Gotong Royong and Kiribati. Próximo. Next. The base of port social thought as a national social thought. Because we will communicate to other people in Indonesia what we accumulate. Because now we are prepared, we have three foundations. Usually people will have one or two, or maybe they will go to the city, will be very isolated, they won't have any of the three. As workers, we have to preserve our national culture, but also our labor culture. So that's why it's very important. It's the basis of a national social thought. So the port social thought, or airline social thought, or oil social thought, it will be the base of national social thought. The base of port social thinking or strategic thinking is national social thinking. And when applied throughout the logistic chain, that's the catch, because it goes out the port, it goes out the airport, it goes out the refinery, it goes out the factory. So it contaminates, it adds to the logistic chain. You see, when a truck driver talks with a docker, where an airline worker talks with a rail worker, they will combine in the same logistics chain different cultural values, different thoughts, but they will be rooted in the same social thought. And they will be also the root for the national thought. And this is very important. So it has to be applied throughout the logistic chain. It will strengthen strategic and national social thinking. To this end, traditional community and collective thinking must be strengthened together with labor thinking, with a national import thinking and strategic thinking inserted in the working class, because the working class, they are in a precarious situation. That's why many countries say, oh, labor is finished. There are lots of people in Italy, Domenico De Masi, oh, lavoro è finito, the labor is finished. No, it's not finished. We work, we dockers, we're there. We airline workers, we're still there. We're still there with our community values, our social values, our social thought. We are not the worker that works in a vaporetto once in a while in a precarious way. We are deeply rooted in our values. And this is very important because we're still alive. Our thought is alive, and we can contribute to national thought. So To this end, traditional community and collective thinking must be strengthened together with labor thinking, with a national import and strategically inserted in the working class, the global working class, that is based on collective work. Everybody that shares this value with us is a collective work, collective values, awareness of where is strategically inserted. Now we're starting talking about the strategic inserted choke points. The bosses, they love to say, oh, we have choke points in Indonesia. We have choke points. We have this choke point. It's good we have choke points. We understand these choke points. We live in these choke points. We are part of these choke points. It's in we ourselves we have choke points, but we don't choke. We have our thought, but we don't choke. But we master, we manage our choke, so our throat, so we will not choke. So that's the same thing. So we have to understand where we are strategically inserted and positioned. A national social thought strengthened in the collective and community values of Gotong Royong and Keria Bhakti can present themselves as strategically positioned forces. So even though if if people don't have a docker on the side or an airline worker to defend them, but if they have community values rooted in Gotong Royong and Keria Bhakti, they are strong. They can present themselves as strategically positioned forces. This is one thing. But then if we add sport, strategic workers, social thought forged in in its method, values, culture, memory, management, and power. So what labor adds to Gotong Royong and Keria Bhakti, so we can further strengthen national social thought based on the collective and community values of Gotong Royong and Keria Bhakti. So we will add labor values, and then we have three instead of having two. That's why the labor thought and the labor values and labor culture and labor management and memory, power, they're very important because they add to the whole of the country. We are democratic forces because of it and can present themselves as even more strategically positioned forces. So when we add labor, a labor thought as a national thought, we are stronger. If I can resume. Próximo. And now we understand where we are uh, strategically positioned. And I'm just talking about the maritime choke points here because I'm just talking about Asia Pacific, and they didn't put it here, but it would say European. Because if we look to the Latin America and the Caribbean, North America, it will have more lines coming from the east. So Indonesia has a lot more lines than this one. They can have lines coming from the east as well. And that's what makes Indonesia rich in, and the challenge to share this richness among the 200 million people, and especially the strategic workers and the working class. But the idea is to show how strategically positioned we are. So on the top of having Gotong Royong, Keria Bhakti, on the top of having our labor thought, we are strategically positioned for power. This is very important to understand ourselves. Próximo. And then we are just putting, now I will see a map of Indonesia with the ports where we can have hub airport, hub refineries, hub factories, the way that Indonesia industrialized itself. So we can make a lot of maps like that. This is a Dockers one, okay? But we can have many. And when we cross this, we get even more powerful. But I will just centralize here on the Dockers. So I have Gotong Royong, I have Keria Bhakti, I have a labor thought, I'm a strategically positioned, and I understand the choke points that I, as a worker, am inserted. So I have five. When I combine this to other strategic workers, I'm a lot more powerful. When I combine this with the whole of the working class, communities, the cities we live in, and interfere, studying, knowing, separating one person to understand the city I live. Why are they moving the capital from Jakarta to the island of Borneo? Why they're doing that? What's going to happen? We have to understand this. We have to understand that everything is happening in our country. And we have to understand not as a specialist, but as a worker. So we can share this. So when we unionize, we don't talk just about unionizing. We talk about other things. We are rich, and then we can transfer our riches to other people. And the people will think we are interesting because we are, because we know our country, because we are transferring things, and we are transferring power in this sense, because we are strategically positioned. So we see here the hub ports, it's the same for airlines. If we see, it will be airline hubs, and then the feeder for the airlines. Because as Indonesia is like Brazil, very big, we need different hubs. So some hubs will be internationally positioned and other nationally positioned, and we need both. We will have in the global supply chain the fifth class. It will talk about it. It's very important to understand how this is important for us. But now we have to understand that it adds values to Gotong Royong and to Kiribati. Bhakti. Próximo. And to end, uh, our conclusions are the foundation of social collective thought for all other things. So we have all the classes we had. I know we had an introduction, the first class, but all the classes we have from now on will be based in our collective, social, national thought. They're the value. We understand what they are. They are Gotong Royong, they are Keria Bhakti, they are our labor values, they are where we strategically position, our hub points, our choke points. All these are our collective thought that we have to teach our fellow comrades on the base. Okay? Uh, or as if you want to use, when I met Jackie, was brothers and sisters. It doesn't matter the way you say, but using brothers and sisters or comrade or other thing, it has to go to every worker we organize. It's our thought and is rooted in our country with our values. And this is very important. So the conclusions are verified in the contribution. We go back to Tang Malakas and other great Indonesian thinkers that I leave to you to make research and continue studying in the strategic national social thought, strengthened in the strategic port or strategic workers' thought for the working class. So it's the gift, it's the contribution we give to other workers, with a social thought strengthened by the thought of port workers and strategic workers aware of their strategic positions in the logistics chain and in alliance. It's very important. When you say, oh, in Indonesia we have 10 federations, 13 federations, 20 federations, it doesn't matter. Before talking to the state and before talking to the boss, you have to put yourselves in alliance. You have to forget or to put aside what divides and to unionize. We work in unions to unionize. So unionize ourselves, to put together, so we can talk to the bosses, so we can talk to the state. This is very important. We have to be in alliance, especially in the strategic workers. It's not random that you have our line workers in our class, because it has to be an alliance between these workers. You know, port workers, rail workers, oil workers, airline workers, factory workers, they are all in the global supply chain, and they need to be in alliance. And if I say docker workers, they have, of course, they have to be in alliance. And if I say airline, of course, they need to be in alliance. So it aligned with ourselves and aligned with the others. Other important thing, it becomes possible to think about the immediate problems of port and strategic workers and the working class as a whole for the historical thought of the working class. So, with the contribution of our labor thought, that is particularly and global, because when I speak to Surya and when I speak with a doctor in Genoa, in Italy, or in Marseille, it's very similar. So there's a global thought, but it's also an Indonesian thought. And we have to master and combine both. Okay? And that's our contribution to the working class. In this way, we can list within national social thought, knowing our strategic place, the urgent and immediate thought of port and industrial workers, logistic workers, airline workers, oil workers, factory and other strategic workers, and our allies, community allies, the city people, no, the citizens of the city would say, we are working for you. We want to make our city better. If we become poor, our city will become poorer. So it's important for the city. Then we separate the circumstantial, strategic, historical thought of the working class to be worked in our working groups. And then I finish and pass the floor to you guys. Thank you very much. It's great. It's one of the classes I learned the most in my life. You know, it's meeting your culture is an honor for me. I'm very happy to be here. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Comrade Professor. I want to say one or two things before other comrades or maybe Jackie want to say something. But let me thank you for helping us to rewrite the narration, not from the view of the bosses, but from the soul of the workers, through Tan Malaka, through Gotong Royong, through Kerja Bakti, as our solid culture, and through national thought, as you said, that root of our struggle. In Indonesia, workers' education remains a massive challenge. In SPGICT and other union, includes Jackie's work with airline union, I believe we've tried and still doing our best to organize education for our members. Me myself was inspired by, as you say, Tan Malaka's books, Madilog, Materialism, Dialectic Logic, and also you said Bapa Republik, the book called Narde Republik, because this is the key idea used by Sukarno, the first president, and other founding fathers of Indonesia. And also you mentioned Freire. I read the book Pedagogy of the Oppressed, but saw education as battlefield of collective and class power. Yet in Indonesia, we face real structural challenge, outsourcing, union cooptation, depoliticization, and even legal repression. Tan Malaka called for a republic rooted in the working class. Paulo Freire reminded us that education is never neutral. Yet we believe for social thought based on collective labor, memory, mutual help, and dignity, as you described uh, clearly, that can and must become our national social thought, a strategy, a compass, a resistance to corporate power. Um, Maybe my question is, and maybe to emphasize today's discussion for our comrades here, in a union environment like in Indonesia, where many members are burdened with precarious contracts, legalistic routines, and daily economic survival, how can we realistically build union education programs that go beyond technical training and become spaces for collective political formation or long-term organizing and even class-based strategy? I think that's from me. Thank you, Comrade Professor.
Thank you so much. Before going to the others, I will keep this question for our 12 classes because this is the big question, you know. And I think we will answer it collectively through these 12 classes because that's why we're here. It's to answer concretely for Indonesian workers. And I believe that I would say that you guys have lots of possibilities because it's a country that is growing, industrializing, is logistically positioned, then we have to say to our bosses and to our the state representatives that we want to be part of this table. We don't want the seat aside, and we cannot. I leave you, but this is the key. This question that you put, and I'm so glad that you made a resume of that. This is important class. It's what we are here, why we are here. Thank you so much, Suri.
I will invite others. Maybe there are some thought or question. Or Jackie, you want to say something?
Um, yes, thank you, Marcelo. Thank you for the lecture. It's really useful, and I'm happy if our colleague from our brother and sister from the airport, the other, they can join in this lecture maybe in the next time. Just want to asking, maybe it's also related with the question from Surya that related with what you just explained about Tan Malaka thought, and also we also discussed about Gotong Royong and Kerja Bakti. Continuing the question from Surya, I think Gotong Royong and Kerja Bakti right now uh, has a big challenge in Indonesia. Of course, we also discuss in the union, every union in Indonesia, we discuss about organizing. And what I want to say is Gotong Royong and Kerja Bakti now has a big challenge because we have a big uh, problem way of thinking from the digital, giant digital system, where now individualism is getting higher, and it's start from the young people or the young worker, maybe not the young worker only, but for the all everybody. So it seems that Gotong Royong and Kerja Bakti should explain, especially what's the meaning of Gotong Royong for the whole worker in Indonesia. I think, I mean, in transport worker, like dockers and airport worker. So, is there any idea or is there any explanation how we can facing this big challenge from digital era that always make every worker right now, especially the young worker, they really think that union is not now is useless for them, and this is what we are facing at the airport. And this is only because what I said is individualism is getting higher because of the digital system. That's what I want to say, and I want to ask to you, Marcelo, and maybe there is another thought also from Surya and from another comrades. Thank you.
Welcome. It's just before passing to other person. This is one thing two things I want to say is first is that we in every country we have a toolbox with things that we will use. Some of our tools will be not in the perfect shape. They'll be old. They will be not a good shape, but they're good tools. They were useful in the past, and they may be useful in the future. And then we have to think about renewing these tools with tool makers. Well, it's not to be nostalgic of the past, but it's something that is inside ourselves. And the other thing I want to share is that there's an Italian book I love a lot from Machiavelli. It's not The Prince that people read a lot. It's The Art of War. It's not Sun Tzu. It's a Machiavelli book. And he talks about the Roman army and the Roman legion and how it was special throughout thousands of years because it mixed young and old and professional. So the legion would be a mixture of young soldiers, older. So when I say older, is above 60. So 60 people together with 20 and together with the most professional that you could find. So I believe they give us a hint that we cannot just have young people in one place isolated, because they will bring values that sometimes will be very good for the collective values that we share, and sometimes they will be very aggressive to it. On the other hand, also, if we have an army just with evocati is the name of the best old guys that only talk about the past, how we were good and stuff, it's not also good. We have to mix, and this mixture it will give us. We will have classes to talk about that, but I think it gives us the way that we will be talking. The idea here is that even though that Gotong Royong and all Indonesia values that are maybe today they are weakened, but I believe that we can look at ourselves and even if you are young, there are ways to get to these people, and that's how we because we need them all. We cannot do it without them. We cannot do without them, and that's the process. So Surya, if you can help the other comrades, because sometimes people don't want to intervene because of language, and then you can do the other way. You did the
Ya, ya.
translation. Yeah.
Oke. Teman-teman, mungkin ada respon terkait penyampaian materi dari Prof. Marcelo tadi, atau ada pertanyaan, silakan. Apa aja terkait dengan hal-hal yang lebih realistik. Tadi saya juga udah memicu diskusi bahwa apa yang disampaikan Prof. Marcelo tadi coba kita kaitkan dengan keseharian teman-teman, mungkin bisa ditanyakan dari aspek keseharian teman-teman, challenge-nya sebagai pengurus, ataupun apapun yang keseharian teman-teman yang dirasakan, apa yang bisa jadi boosting gitu dari materi Marcelo hari ini.
Surya, we can also make a link with the working groups, and then you can put the challenges that you told me that you want to address. So we can mix. We can make a bridge to the working groups. So you talk about precarious collective bargaining agreement and contracts as well inside the port. That's something that we don't see a lot in many ports, because it's like a temperature measure, that you have more organizing and less organizing, and you have more working control of the process, how you form, how you hire, and how you dismiss. And this is linked to the Docker's culture and Docker's thought. And in very rare situations with airlines thoughts, as I saw in Argentina, but in not many places in the world. But in some places they have to. But the idea is to link with the concrete things in the working group, as you said, the things that you sent me. Remember, now we will start linking the class with this as well. So if you wanna start, if the guys wants to put, we can talk about practical things, because I think the message from the class, I think it was addressed, is more like how we will develop, as Jackie and you said, how we will bring to the concrete thing. And even though if we have classes to address that, I think the thought is a toolbox that we bring ourselves as cadres, Surya. This is very important, because me and Jackie, for example, we were sent to Germany as cadres, like to be prepared. And we have to prepare the people that go some places. It can be random. It can be not organize ourselves to organize. We have to be organized to organize. So in a way, if you want to link the list, I would thank you for that, because it will link what we have to do.
Ya, oke, Marcel. Teman-teman, kalau nggak perlu pakai bahasa Inggris, nanti saya yang translate, nggak masalah. Ada 2 translator, ada
Yeah, I understood.
Mbak Jackie juga.
because some words in Baksa are more Latin, so I can understand that you were saying.
Oke, mungkin siapa? Jul, Rio, I cannot see the other. Yo, ada pertanyaan atau concern?
I'm hearing.
Yeah.
I'm just still driving on my home, so I just hearing.
Okay, Rio. So
Eh,
let's do that for the next meeting. You will prepare yourself some points that you want to discuss, linked to the class today, because the idea of the working group is to have each one has a contribution on the practical things that we do. So link to the class with things that Surya can put in your group later on to share the things that you sent me. Remember, Surya,
ya,
the practical things. So each one
ya.
of you can contribute. If you don't want to speak, written, and then Surya can codify and put it here. I think it will help us this way also.
Okay, I will emphasize to the comrades here. Marcelo nyampaikan tadi barusan bahwa kalau teman-teman ragu atau ada language keterbatasan bahasa, next class atau kelas selanjutnya itu bisa nulis atau kirim ke saya WA langsung. Nanti saya coba translate apa concern teman-teman ataupun juga ada pertanyaan jika ada pertanyaan, karena harapan Marcelo dari kelas ini dan kelas-kelas lainnya ke depan adalah masing-masing individu kita itu paling nggak memegang satu peranan, memegang satu value dari kelas-kelas yang sudah kita ikuti untuk disebarkan lagi, apakah itu terkait dengan fungsi kita sebagai pengurus ataupun sebagai organizer di working group atau apa ya kita bilangnya, misalnya kelompok kerja untuk membela teman-teman outsourcing atau di teman-teman federasi, working group seperti itu.
So, Surya, can you bring a little bit of the subjects that we discussed on the side, like the things that you wanted to discuss, just to put it
Oke.
in?
Oke. Teman-teman tadi di awal setelah Profesor Marcelo menyampaikan materi, saya coba membuat satu, boleh dibilang kesimpulan kecil lah ya, bahwa Marcelo sudah membantu kita untuk menuliskan ulang narasi perjuangan, bukan hanya dari sisi bos-bos, tetapi juga dari sisi yang menyentuh jiwa langsung perjuangan dari sisi pekerja. Baik itu lewat pemikiran Tan Malaka, lewat bahkan Marcelo menyebutkan gotong royong, kerja bakti sebagai budaya yang basic dan solid dari Indonesia. Bahkan lewat pemikiran nasional ya, national thought sebagai akar daripada perjuangan. Saya juga sampaikan di Indonesia memang pendidikan untuk pekerja ini masih menjadi tantangan besar. Seperti di SPJ City, bahkan serikat lain. Saya juga tadi sampaikan Mbak Jeki itu kerja keras dengan organizing teman-teman pekerja bandara. Nah, ini pekerjaan yang terus-menerus kita lakukan untuk mengorganisir pendidikan bagi anggota-anggota kita. Nah, Marcelo menekankan bahwa pendidikan ini penting untuk suatu perubahan kolektif. Jadi tadi terakhir saya tanyakan bahwa untuk tantangan-tantangan tersebut yang kita hadapi, baik itu dibebankan juga dengan kondisi-kondisi kayak pekerja kontrak, outsourcing, bahkan harus bertahan sehari-hari dengan keadaan ekonomi yang serba kurang. Bagaimana narasi Marcelo itu secara realistis bisa kita gunakan untuk membangun serikat lewat program-program yang mana nyebrang jauh dari hanya training secara teknis menjadi sebuah ruang untuk membangun kekuatan kolektif, bagaimana juga mengorganisir dalam jangka panjang, dan juga membangun strategi-strategi kolektif lainnya. Kira-kira kelas Marcelo tadi disampaikan seputar itu. I think I have wrap up the class for
Great.
our comrades here.
The idea is like if we can get two things just to wrap up our class today too, our working group. If we analyze what you and Jackie said about precarious situation and how to deal with this individualistic approach, I would say that we need to start with the situation of our country and the situation of the way we think about it. It has to go from the big to the small. Usually we go to the working place and community place and we talk about local things directly. And what Tambalaka and the class today and the national thought, not just Tambalaka, but the way we did in other countries, we are saying that in order to talk about precarious contracts and individualism, we have to discuss the whole situation. The situation. There's a way that you would put it in English. It would put what's happening now. What's happening now in the way that you will deal with the situation, the concrete situation. So the word in English would be the conjuncture, the specific situation that we're dealing now. So what's the conjuncture? What's the situation we're dealing now? But from a broad perspective, from a national thought, then we can deal with these values. Then we can get to feelings, we can get to community values. Where you're from, what is your community? So you get more than an individual. You have to go out of an individual. And in the situation of the precarious work, we have to deal in a way that it is not a reasonable thing in one of the 10 economies of the world. We have to deal with this situation. So we have to talk about that. And people are saying, as we did in our last class, that will be the fifth economy soon. So how can it be if it doesn't share the cake? And decent work with decent contract is part of the game. So this is a process that we will be dealing with our classes. But Surya, this is very important to know that the situation that you are now, and the airline workers and oil workers and the factory workers, especially factory workers in Indonesia, is not as bad as in other countries. And I would just say, to wrap up, the situation of the workers in El Salvador now. They are 6 months without salary. The dockers, the strongest workers in El Salvador, 6 months without salary because Newport, a company from Turkey, came to the country and separated all the trade unionists, the trade union representatives, and say, we will not continue with organizing anymore. We will not continue with organized workers. We will break with a collective bargaining agreement, and we will start with precarious contracts. So things can come and go. Then it's difficult. We have to link in El Salvador. Instead of Gotong Royong, we link to the violence of the country, the way it was built. since its independence, how violent it was, and how we can be solidary ourselves. So, how I can connect your union and the El Salvador Union. So, you, Docker to Docker, you can help yourselves to be solidary, etc. Because these 150 workers from 6 months, they're living on solidarity of the others. So we have different levels of situation that we are facing. And Gotong Hoyong and Kiribati and the labor, the Dockers and airline labor expertise and memory and culture and thought, especially thought, are the tools that we are not on the position that we would like to be, but we are not at the position on the bottom of the scale. We are in a position that we can exercise many things. And that's why I give you for the working groups next time. We have to exercise how we can answer these two things that you put today. You and Jackie. How we can, it has to I can give hints, I can provoke, we can chat, but it has to come from the working groups. We have to discuss the alternatives and how we can get to solve it. Understand? This is very important. So we can use our national thought as a something that is important to us. I think there's a comrade that would like to speak. He put the camera.
Jul, mau sampaikan sesuatu?
Uh, Sorry, Marcelo, I'm late
Go ahead.
for doing this class because I have a class, another class at the same time. Yan, mungkin dalam bahasa ya, jadi agak
Yuk,
banyak
yuk.
nih. Karena
Ya,
kan
ya.
memang kita bicara masalah pergerakan pekerja ini kan sebenarnya untuk kondisi di Tanjung Priok sendiri kan nggak terlalu apa ya nggak terlalu fokus dan terlalu melebar lah kemana-mana. Yang jadi pertanyaan gue itu pergerakan pekerja sekarang itu masih relevan nggak sih di era digital dan industri 4.0 itu yang pertama. Kalau misalnya memang masih relevan, eh, seperti apa pergerakan yang seharusnya dilakukan khususnya di Tanjung Priok, apalagi untuk memperjuangkan hak-hak teman-teman yang masih TNO lah, masih outsourcing. Karena kita sama-sama tahu khususnya di JCT kalau pergerakan yang kita lakukan masih sama seperti yang sebelum-sebelumnya, sepertinya sih nggak terlalu efektif ya. Karena memang pekerja di JCT bisa dianggap minus growth lah untuk pekerjanya karena memang berkurang terus, tidak ada penambahan, sementara hampir 80% itu pekerjanya itu berumur sudah di atas 40-an dan mungkin memasuki umur 50. Jadi kalau untuk sekelas training atau nambah kegiatan-kegiatan yang bersifatnya belajar di dalam ruangan mungkin agak sedikit tidak tertarik lah. Nah, pertanyaan selanjutnya, bisa nggak Marcelo coba ada nggak perbandingan efektivitas pergerakan pekerja di Indonesia dengan negara lain dalam memperjuangkan hak-hak buruhnya? Jika memang ada perbandingannya, seperti apa? Jika bisa nggak itu di dicontoh dicontoh untuk pergerakan pekerja di Indonesia khususnya di sektor pelabuhan. Itu aja sih, Yan.
Thank you, Zul. Thank you so much.
So before I translate Zul questions, I would like to translate to our members about the important things you just mentioned earlier. Can I do that?
Okay,
Comrade.
yeah, go ahead, go ahead, go ahead.
Ya, sebelum Ane translate pertanyaan Jul, jadi tadi sebelum pertanyaan sedikit Marcelo menggambarkan sesuatu hal. Jadi Marcelo menekankan bahwa ini mungkin ada kaitannya dengan pertanyaannya Zul. Jadi precarious situation atau bahasanya tadi kayak model TNO atau pekerja tanpa jaminan atau security lah ya, kayak nggak ada PKB itu dibilang precarious situation. Nah, Marcelo menekankan bahwa eh, ketika kita menghadapi sesuatu yang besar, eh, tantangan besar gitu ya, kita harus melihat sesuatu secara konkret dan mencoba untuk bahasanya konjunktori tadi ya, atau mengkoneksikan existing kondisi yang eksis dengan situasi yang lebih besar. Uh, untuk menggambarkan konteksnya gini, kayak sekarang situasi serikat terkuat pelabuhan di El Salvador itu kondisinya sekarang 6 bulan nggak digaji. Nah, kondisi mereka itu diperparah dengan PKB mereka nggak disetujui dan terang-terangan manajemen bilang kita akan implementasikan semuanya secara outsourcing. Nah, tadi ketika kita menggunakan national thought, sebenarnya kan gotong royong ini sama solidaritas sama ya. Dan ketika kita menghubungkan situasi ini dengan kondisi Indonesia, misalnya konteksnya suatu saat yang di El Salvador itu akan terjadi di kita. Sehingga gimana kita mengkoneksikan ini sehingga bisa saling nolong dan relevan dengan tadi. Kenapa Marcelo ngingetin soal national thought bahwa saling solidaritas dan nolong dengan situasi yang tadi konjunktori tadi itu bisa ngelunturin individualisme dan ini berguna untuk perjuangan yang lebih besar. Nah, kira-kira itu. Nah, tadi next-nya Marcelo nanti kita akan ada working group ya. Dan Marcelo akan mencoba provoke atau memberikan studi kasus. Mungkin nanti Mbak Jeki akan join lagi. Jadi bagaimana working group ini nanti next class ini bisa menjawab terhadap simulasi masalah yang disampaikan oleh Marcelo. Dan bagaimana kita menyelesaikannya. Nah, ini mungkin terkoneksi dengan pertanyaannya Zul nih. Gue coba translate dulu ya, Depjen ya. Marcelo, regarding the concern of Zul, he is in a college now, so he's on the lecture, another lecture, so he tries to divide, but the good value is Zul still concerned about the education to complementary our struggle. He asked about condition of global youth struggle regarding the challenge with let's say industrial 4.0, and also we are facing with the precarious work sourcing and etc. Because if we see, according to him, like in SPGICT, if we still use the same pattern of struggle, it's not very effective. Let's say in one context, like we are not growing in members because many retirement workers are not replaced with the new one. And now the condition of the workers, let's say typically the age between 40 to 50, this brings another situation to our union, because to push them to learn to follow the class, it's a challenging as well for the union officials. That's the situation of our union. And another follow-up question is there any let's say success story other union, global union struggling that can ignite or inspire uh, uh, the struggle of SPG ICT Union? That's the
Wow.
concern and question of Zo.
Well, so this is I believe, you know, first thing I want to say is first things first. So this class gives me an idea that Indonesia is not in a bad situation in my because it has tools in the toolbox that we can use. And as Zul said, maybe some tools are not good for certain situation that will be good to other situations. So I'm not advocating one tool for every situation. One struggle it has to meet with the classical ways of struggling. This not is not the way I'm saying, but we have to keep all the tools ready to use. So even the ones that we are not very used to do it, the ones that we are not accustomed to do it, we have to be prepared. And that's the idea of the class. As I said, in my opinion, the El Salvador workers, they were not prepared for the tsunami coming, because that's the word. It was a tsunami that came and destroyed their organizing dockers in El Salvador. And I visit them before, and I visit them after, and I saw how uh, they uh, they they are dealing with the situation. It's not an easy situation, but I believe when you have rooted culture, when you have a rooted thought, when you have a rooted labor um, base that you can depend on, it's easier to do it. We cannot get into a situation that our collective values die. When Jackie says about individualism, is that when this is like a poison that takes control of our collective environment. And we will be discussing this in the other classes. But the idea today is to say that in Indonesia, you have good fundamentals, you have good basis to work. And that's the idea. We have hope because we have good base, even though they're weak. I agree with Jackie. I'm not romanticizing things and say that Goto Hoyong is strong today, but we can contribute by getting stronger in our categories, in our workers, to contribute to make the country stronger. Also to make Gotong Hoyong in the future stronger, because it's one thing feeding the other. And for the second part, as Jules said, what hopes you have? The reason I am in France is to study in what I believe is one of the most stronger dockers and other workers. You know, the trade union movement in France is very strong, but the dockers is stronger than the rest. And the way they are saying is they repeat a lot sentence that they speak also in Brazil. Uh, it's to say that organizing, it's something that organizing at the ports, it's something that only can be done by dockers. Organizing at the airport is something that can only be done by airline workers. So the ones that will answer the questions are those who rule the show. And if we leave to the bosses to rule, if we leave to the state to rule alone, they will give us the thing wrapped and said, this is what we have for you. And we have to participate in the whole process. And that's what the dockers, they say about 4.0 here. They say modernizing is okay when it's done with us. Without us, it will not be done the way you want. So we have to be prepared to go saying that and proving, Zu, this is very important, proving that we can do modernization in a way they cannot do it with machines. They need us because we are more productive, we are more professional, we have culture, we have values, and more. We can answer in climate change crisis, in war crisis, in violence crisis, in pandemic crisis that a machine cannot answer. So if we are organized and strongly organized, we can answer in a way that a non-organized situation cannot answer. And that's my hope to answer. And that's the way the dockers in Marseille especially, they base themselves a lot in their traditions, but they also base in modernity, and they also base in community, and they also base in the city. The city sees them when they are angry because they go out of the port and they march. They don't do any violence. They just march. So everybody, so they pull the solidarity from the city to their problems, and they make their problems the city problems. So this is about their thought because they're deeply rooted with the city, and the city is rooted with their thoughts. And if it weakens, as Jackie said, because the community values are weakening in our modern world, but we are the beacon, we are the lighthouse, we are the ones that can speak out. And the idea to have the thought today is that we have something to say, and this something to say is from our thoughts. So we have to work on our thoughts. So to answer your question about 4.0, we have a class about modernization. We have one class about management, modernization, and productivity. Okay? We have one class about that. But in order to answer that, we need other teams. We have to build up our answer. It cannot go straight. As I said, in order to talk about unionizing, we need to talk about our thoughts, the way we are, the way where we come from, where we're going. So we need to have a strategy. And modernization is about people. Modernization is about people. It's not about technology. It's not about productivity. It's not about the way that the boss prepares. Because I've seen what the bosses said about the dockers and strategic workers in Indonesia. They say they are in a poor environment, they don't have responsibility, they're not prepared for the future, they're not professionals, but this is their vision. I am sure that we are professionals, we are prepared, we can be more prepared, we can be more professionals, we are productive, we have productivity, we can handle modernization, we can prepare ourselves better if we do it. Because if they do it, won't be the way we want. So we have to do it. And we have to prove the government. The key for, we have a class also about that, about how we handle the government and how we intervene in the government, because we have to act in the parliament. We have to act in the Indonesian parliament, organized, united in the Indonesian parliament. We have to say, if the productivity is high in this sport, wealth has to be shared in the sport. If you want to modernize, okay, we want better salary, we want to work less, and we want to retire not later, but sooner. So we want a good environment so we can handle modernity. Because a port, an airport, a refinery, a factory that is prepared with professionals prepared really here and here, we handle better the situation. So we can find better workers if they're linked to modernization. 4.0 is about workers. It's not about modernization only. It's about workers and about two things in the government that we have to interfere. How can we project that, and how can we plan that? This 4.0 and modernizing is about productivity and management. And this has to be done with workers, not without workers, because we have something to say from our thoughts. So that's the way I would answer you. I don't know if Furman wants to put something. We are wrapping up, and I don't see Surya, but I believe for today, I think we covered most of it. I will now ask if you want to say something else. I don't know if you want to add something, whether Furman or Irinda or Rio. Yeah, Furman, I'm listening.
Oke, terima kasih Mas Selo. Saya pakai bahasa Dep, nanti tolong translate. Pertama, terima kasih dan apresiasi kepada Marcelo yang telah memberikan sharingnya untuk malam ini. Sangat bermanfaat bagi kami di SPJ ICT, terutama tadi terkait dengan nilai-nilai kerja bakti, gotong royong, solidaritas, dan yang lainnya. Kemudian yang kedua, saya mohon maaf atas nama SPJ ICT karena kebetulan malam ini teman-teman tadi ada kegiatan lain sehingga tidak bisa optimal untuk kehadiran. Tapi untuk ke depan insya Allah kita akan mengorganize lagi karena memang ini menjadi salah satu kendala juga di kita terkait dengan beberapa hal yang kita lakukan, ada intimidasi dan yang lainnya, sehingga memang mengajak teman-teman untuk sharing session seperti ini dan dengan nanti ujungnya adalah goalnya untuk memperkuat organisasi dan yang lainnya, memang di kami menjadi tantangan tersendiri. Tapi saya yakin pelan-pelan kita bisa perlahan kita bisa mengajak teman-teman untuk terus bergerak sehingga bisa memperkuat organisasi di kami di SPJ ICT. Terima kasih Pak Marcelo.
Thank you, Furman. Jackie, if you can
Yes.
help me, please.
Because Surya is not here, so Firman just mentioned, thank you for having us here in the class. And I'm so sorry that the participant is not so much because the situation is in our company and also in the union. There are many things happen, and also there is an intimidation for the worker as well. But I hope for the next class, we will have our colleagues to our brother and sister to join and to participate this class. And we'll bring this training and this class to our member, and this is also good for all of us here. Thank you. That's what he said. But Marcelo, what I just want to before you finish or we finish this class, but what just you explained to Zul, I think it's also important to our comrade here to know. Sorry.
Yeah, Jackie, go ahead.
To know what you just say, Mas Zul, saya sangat tertarik dengan apa yang barusan disampaikan oleh Mas Marcelo. Walaupun saya setengahnya nggak mendengarkan apa yang diterjemahkan oleh Surya, tapi Marcelo itu menjawab pertanyaan Mas Zul yang tadi barusan saja. Saya juga mendengar pertanyaannya Mas, bahwa dia mengatakan pertanyaan Mas itu sangat bagus, dan apa yang menjadi kegelisahan Mas itu merupakan hal pertama yang harus dilakukan oleh para pekerja, khususnya pelabuhan di Indonesia. Nah, yang mau ditekankan oleh dia adalah kebersamaan kita dalam pemahaman gotong royong dan kerja bakti itu harus diterapkan secara nyata, dan kita harus berbicara awalnya adalah bicara tentang kondisi yang terjadi, bicara tentang modernisasi, itu tentang manusia, tentang diri kita yang related dengan para pekerja, worker. Nah, kita harus berbicara tentang diri kita, khususnya tentang pemikiran kita. Apa sih yang kita pahami tentang 4.0 itu bukan hanya persoalan modernisasi, tapi itu persoalan pekerja, di mana pekerja menghadapi kondisi yang sangat tidak bagus, khususnya dengan adanya 4.0 dan kondisi kerja saat ini dan kondisi hidup pekerja itu menjadi semakin sulit ketika hal ini tidak dipahami secara pemikiran. Makanya apa yang dibawakan oleh Marcelo pada malam hari ini itu merupakan hal yang sangat penting ketika kita mau melihat bagaimana kita mengorganize, kemudian pekerja itu mempunyai gaji yang layak, kondisi kerja yang bagus, yang pada saatnya nanti para pekerja yang bicara tentang modernisasi, karena modernisasi itu bukan masalah tentang gaya hidup ataupun teknologi, tapi itu masalah tentang kehidupan pekerja. Nah, inilah yang mau ditekankan bahwa modernisasi itu harus dilakukan bersama-sama dan yang berbicara tentang modernisasi itu adalah pekerja, karena di situ dimulai dari pola pikirnya pekerja. Saya pikir itu yang bisa saya terjemahkan. Saya merangkumkan selain yang tadi dia sebutkan bahwa pengalaman dia di Prancis, kekuatan serikat pekerja sana sangat besar, mereka melakukan long march, mereka menyampaikan ide-ide mereka tidak melakukan tindakan kekerasan, tetapi mereka terjun langsung karena mereka tahu mereka harus menyampaikan ini ke negara, mereka harus menyampaikan ini ke perusahaan bahwa kondisi mereka harus diperhatikan oleh negara dan ini tidak bisa dilakukan sendiri-sendiri tapi harus dilakukan secara bersama-sama. Saya pikir itu sih Mas yang tadi saya sempat tangkap, walaupun setengahnya saya nggak tahu ya yang diterjemahkan oleh Surya tadi. That's just mentioned to Zul. Okay, Surya now is back.
Sorry, I got reception problem. I'm sorry.
No problem. It's just to say, I mean, just to wrap up, I just thank Furman. Say, you guys here, this is to form cadres to form others. So I understand that this class, it's not meant to be packed. Is here so you can reproduce this. It will be recorded so you can work later on. But the idea nowadays, I leave this place full of hope because I understand that Indonesian workers, not just dockers, but the strategic workers, they have conditions to manage their problems. And that's so I'm not working on a desert. And you're now weak. You're very strong with it because you have strong values. And this makes a base for strong thought. And from strong thought, as Tamalaka said, we have to look for people that are working in and for Indonesia. So we have to find people in the parliament, our alliance. So we will build a network that will enable to answer the things Zul said and the things that we will do. That Furman just said that the fragilities of our day-by-day things. I'm very optimistic in a way that we can do things with our hands and progress. So I thank you so much. I'd like to thank Surya and Jackie for the translation, for your presence. I'm sure that we can do a lot better if we prepare ourselves better, and that's what we're doing here. We are talking with our forefathers so they can advise us, and that's the thing, and that's rich. And I'm leaving here a lot richer than what I came, the way I came today. Thank you so much, so much.
Thank you, Comrade Professor. Thank you, Jackie, for helping me.
Jackie.
Thank you. Just one thing before we leave.
Yeah, go ahead.
From the part of you mentioned about number 5, education collective, maybe, and also related with the working group, maybe it's only an idea for Surya and our comrade at the port. The working group, maybe we can also discuss. I will bring my group from airport And then before, because it's only once a month, can we do it? I mean, in Indonesia, port and airport, we just discussed before we entering the class, maybe 2 weeks before the class, and then we discuss what we are going, because related to the educative collective, it's not only about the port issue and the airport issue, but it's about worker issue. So we will have a value, feeling, and goal together. It's only an idea.
Yeah, so it is a great idea because this relates with the working group.
Yeah.
To put
Yeah,
what
yeah, it is.
you said, and then you will relate it to that, and we have a more prepared for the working group. So it's a great idea. Okay.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
So you guys link
Great.
up, and we keep in touch because I have yours, I have Jackie's, and we keep in touch. Thank you so much, guys. And
Thank you,
Patricia.
comrade. Thank you, Jackie.
Uh,
Thank you all.
Ciao,
Thank you,
Jackie.
Patricia.
Ciao,
Thank
ciao,
you.
Zu.
Ciao,
Fernand.
thank
Thank
you.
Rio, Ininda, Surya.
Okay. Thank you, Marcelo.